Welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here. We are expecting a few more people to join. So my name is Jessica Utiki, and I lead the operations at the Global Distributors Collective. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce our new training course, Benchmarking for Last Mile Distributors. This is a training course with 3 training modules, which will explain in depth 23 key performance indicators, or otherwise known as KPIs, that we believe are critical to the success of a last mile distribution company. So today's webinar is hosted by the Global Distributors Collective in partnership with Hystra, who are a co-founder of the GDC and a global impact consulting firm that works with businesses and social sector pioneers like yourselves to design and implement inclusive business approaches that are profitable, scalable, and eradicate social and environmental problems. The training is supported by GetInvest, which is a European technical advisory facility which mobilizes investment in renewable energy by supporting companies get investment ready and link them with financiers. It's a donor-funded program. GetInvest services are entirely free of charge, and they have a year-round open application portal where you can find all the information regarding how to apply for that support. So we'll put the link in the chat now if you're interested in understanding more about GetInvest support. So let's have a little look at our agenda today. So I'm going to spend the first few minutes just introducing the benchmark, the report and accompanying tool, as well as this training. Then I'll hand over to Chi, who will take you through the 7 KPIs that relate to value proposition. We will have plenty of time for questions and answers, but what we ask is that you type your question into the chat as we go along, and we will answer them at the end in the Q&A session. We've got plenty of time today, so we're hoping to get to all of them at the end. That being said, if the question is specifically on how to calculate the KPI, Chi will answer that whilst we're on that particular KPI. This session is very interactive. We've got a number of different polls for you as we work through the KPIs. So please do answer them when they pop up on the screen. As always, please ensure that you are muted unless you're asking a question during the Q&A session. And as a reminder, this is the first in a series of 3 trainings on these topics. And if you attend all 3 of the sessions and complete and submit the accompanying Excel tool as a homework, you'll be issued with a completion certificate. We'll also be hosting 3 drop-in sessions where you can come and get your questions answered in a more informal setting if you feel like you need more support on a particular KPI. So, without further ado, let's explain what the benchmark entails. So this tool and the report was funded with support by FCDO under the Transforming Energy Access Programme. And the tool has 3 main aims. The primary aim, and the reason why we wanted to try and develop this tool, was so that GDC members and last mile distribution companies could track and assess your performance and see how you compare against your peers. We're hoping that it will increase transparency and provide data that will help both funders and donors better understand last mile distribution businesses so that they adapt and build programs that better support you and increase the financing flows to your business. And finally, we hope that it'll be a useful tool for the wider sector to more fully understand the unique value that last mile distributors bring to the sector. So to make it a little bit more manageable, we've grouped the KPIs around 3 areas. One, which we'll look at today, is your value proposition and financing. The next session will look specifically at sales and marketing, and then final session will focus on all of the back-end infrastructure and overheads. So in creating the benchmark, we use data collected from working with over 73 last mile distributors, as well as survey data from 109 GDC members who completed our biannual survey. We also did speak to sector experts such as Paygo Labs. So for each KPI, next slide, please. For each KPI, you'll see that the benchmark is grouped into 3 areas. So firstly, there's can be improved. And this is areas where you might want to consider focusing on first. If you fall into the good, we feel that you will become a sustainable business. And then obviously best practice indicates how you can improve to increase your profitability. Just want to pause now to do a little bit of a disclaimer. So we hope that you will be able to use this as a guide to help you auto-diagnose where you are as a business. But we appreciate that 23 KPIs might seem like a lot. So we suggest that you focus your resources on improving 1 or 2 at a time. We also know that last mile distribution companies operate in many geographies. They sell a range of product types and through different channels. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And some of the benchmarks might not be applicable to your geography and market segment. This is our first attempt at doing this. We know it won't be perfect, and we expect it to evolve over time as more and more companies adopt this and we get more data to help our benchmarks be more accurate. So having said that, we also really appreciate your feedback as you go through the tool. So please do reach out with any suggestions or comments that you might have. But instead of me telling you the reasons as to why you should use this tool, we've added a few quotes in there by other last mile distribution companies who have already applied or started using this tool in their business. So I'm just going to pause for a minute or so to give you a chance to read some of those quotes. Okay, next slide, please. So if you're interested in moving ahead, we've also put all of the KPIs that are grouped into the 3 overarching headings. So this week we'll be focusing on those 7 that are under the value proposition slide. So without further ado, please let me introduce to you our trainers that will guide you into this exciting world of key performance indicators. So we've got Lucy Klaasfeld-McGrath, who is a partner at Hystra and a co-founder of the Global Distributors Collective. So Lucy joined Hystra in 2009, and she now leads the marketing and last mile distribution practice. She's directly supported over 50 companies in improving their sales and marketing efforts for beneficial goods towards low-income clients. Sharma is a senior consultant at Hystra, He joined in 2021, and since he has helped set up and operate a technical assistance facility for a European DFI and executed multiple technical assistance projects, research pieces on innovative healthcare and inclusive insurance in low-income countries. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to She now, who will take you through the KPIs in more detail.
Thanks a lot, Jessica, and hello, everybody. Excited to present the KPIs to you today. So if we move on, as Jessica just mentioned, we will be looking at the value proposition section today and the 7 KPIs that fall in this section. As Jessica also mentioned, we'll try to make it a bit more interactive and make sure that nobody falls asleep. So we'll start with a question, and we'll put up a poll on the first KPI, which is the Net Promoter Score. So it's a globally recognized measure of customer satisfaction. I suppose that many of you might know what it is. So the first question here is that measuring the Net Promoter Score, well, I don't know what the NPS is, should be done monthly as a tool to detect causes of dissatisfaction, or should be done annually to measure customer satisfaction. So please go ahead and put in your votes. We'll wait a few seconds so that all of you can answer before showing the correct response. All right, 5 more seconds. All right, maybe we can put up the answer to the poll and see what you all responded. So the correct answer was that it should be done monthly as a tool to detect causes of dissatisfaction, and most of you actually got that right. 67% of you who thought that was the answer, so great. Good to know that many of you are aware of what this KPI is about. So moving on, the KPI of the Net Promoter Score, it actually, as we said, is a measure of customer satisfaction across industries. It shows how loyal your customers are to you, and also what the likelihood of them repurchasing from you and spreading the positive word of mouth for your product is. The way it is calculated is that we asked our customers a simple question, which is to say, what is the likeliness that they would promote this product or service of yours to their friends or families? And they have to score it between 0 to 10, with 0 being not likely at all and 10 being very likely. Then you take everyone who responds 9 or 10, who are your promoters, as a percentage of the total responses. And you take everybody who replies 6 and below as the percent of your detractors out of the total responses. You subtract detractors from promoters, multiply it by 100, and that gives you a number between minus 100 and plus 100, which is your Net Promoter Score. So now this Net Promoter Score, it varies across industries. A 60 decibel survey has actually showed that the median for agriculture, for example, is about 41, for education about 56, for off-grid energy around 43, and varies also by products. So for example, within the off-grid energy sector, solar lanterns, the score was around 64, the median. For other appliances, it was around 18. What we have observed across continents and across industries is that if you are under 40, this typically puts your company at a risk of having negative word of mouth, and of course then discouraging future purchase from other clients. And below this level, the companies that we benchmarked, it is above this level that the companies that we benchmarked were able to operate in a financially sustainable manner. So above 60 is achievable, and that is why we have put the benchmark values that you see on the bottom right as best practice above 60, good between 40 to 60 and can be improved 40 or below, or the fact that you don't measure this KPI. Again, just as a reminder, can be improved. If you fall in the can be improved category, this is probably a KPI that you should be looking at to make sure that you can be financially sustainable and profitable as a priority. The best practices that we have seen while doing our benchmark for this KPI is to track your NPS for each product or service that you have. So what you can do is you can aim for at least 10% of your customer base to be surveyed with the Net Promoter Score question. This can be done through SMS, through your call center internally, or even through your agents asking the question directly as a survey with your clients. It should ideally be done monthly. And Beyond just products and services, you can actually extend the NPS question to getting feedback about your agents as well. So then simply the NPS question will be shifted to what is the likelihood that you would recommend an agent to your friend and family. Again, the way of calculating it is the same, but that also gives you a measure of satisfaction with the customer service that your agents are providing on the ground. And you can go one step further and align a part of the compensation of your agents based on the score that they receive from these surveys. The other best practice that we've seen is to add an open-ended question to the survey so that you can get more qualitative, more informative feedbacks from the clients. Um, and for those services or products which score badly, you should actually go further in detail and ask customers about the problems that they're facing, the different barriers, and try to resolve this problem as soon as possible. You should also be in touch with the detractors, so everybody who votes 6 and below, to make sure that you can quickly resolve the problem that they're facing and that the bad word of mouth about your product and service doesn't spread and doesn't discourage future potential buyers from buying your product. So, moving on now, unless we have any questions on the KPI itself. All right. So the next one that we'll be looking at is the unique selling point of a company. Basically, what makes your solution better than the competitor? What is the characteristic, the element that makes you better than your competition? And here, the question is that you should be calculating your USP for customers only, for customers and non-customers, at least for 100 people, for 20 to 100 people, every 2 years, at least once a year, and when course correcting after facing a critical business challenge. Now, you can have multiple responses to the question, so more than one option can be correct. So please choose all the options that you think are the correct response to this question.
Although in this poll it's been set up just for a single choice, so pick the one that you think you're most likely to, and then you can provide the different answers when we get the results.
Yeah, let's give everybody 5 more seconds. All right, we can move on to the answer now. And we'll see if you got at least one of the options. Yep. In fact, almost everybody has gotten one of the right options. So for the unique selling proposition, you should you should survey both your customers and non-customers, at least 20 to 100 people, at least once a year, or in case you're facing a critical situation such as a sudden drop in sales, and you're course correcting at that point, you should do it as well. So as I was saying earlier, the unique selling proposition is basically the thing that will make your solution better than your competitor. Um, it could be the fact that you have better quality, that you have better after sales services, that you have a lower price, even though the lower price proposition is usually a temporary one. But it is a good first step towards building a holistic value proposition, and to know better not just why your customers buy your product, but also what the barriers are for your non-customers to not go for your product. And identifying this unique selling proposition will also help yourself to position yourself in the competitive landscape that you have in your market. If we can go to the next slide. So the way of calculating this, again, it's a more qualitative KPI. So it'll be a survey of both your current consumers and your non-consumers. So you should ideally aim to survey about 10 to 50 customers, and about 10 to 50, or between 20 to 100, as we said earlier, even better, non-customers. These surveys, they can be done informally by your sales agents asking customers on the ground and non-customers on the ground the following questions that I'll just come to, or centrally by call centers using phones, SMS, your company website. And even better, you can group this survey question with the survey that you do for your NPS scoring as well. So there are two types of questions that you can ask. Um, Two groups of questions that you can ask. For your customers, you should be asking, what is that makes our product or service better than the competitors? And for those who don't use your product, you should ask why they are not using the product or services, why they have not purchased. And then based on the analysis of these responses, you can understand what your unique selling proposition is for each product and service, and also what are the barriers that are stopping your non-customers from buying your product. So the benchmark value here will again depend on whether or not you do this survey that we can see on the next slide, please. So you're in the best practice category if you're conducting these surveys to validate your USP with your customers and also understand barriers for your non-customers in the last 12 months. You fall in the good category if you've done this survey to validate your USP with customers or understand barriers for non-customers in the last 12 to 24 months. And you're in the can be improved category if you don't do these surveys, or that you do these surveys but you have not done them in the last 24 months. Here, the best practices that we've observed are to segment your customers and non-customers. So your customers, for example, you can segment them based on characteristics that will define their usage um, and of your product. So this could be on the basis of location, their gender, their income levels, etc. And also based on the type of products that they're using. And the non-customers can be segmented on the basis of the alternative products to your product that they use, and the different categories of pain points that they might be facing as customers. So for your customers whom you're asking, why is our product better than the competition, the key is to understand not only what they like about your product, but also what is that characteristics that makes you stand out from the competition. So why are you better in comparison to your competition? What is that they really like in your product? Similarly, when you're thinking of the non-customers and the barriers that they have to purchase, you should really understand what their likes, dislikes are, what are the risks that they see in switching to your product, are there any issues of access. Usually these reasons will be around affordability, around some bad customer experience, around maybe a poor perception of your brand image amongst the non-customers. The next one that we have here is to research your competitors. So basically, analyze and map your competition uh, at least every year, looking at what they're doing, what are the products that they're offering, at what price points, based on what marketing arguments, um, and even more precisely, on the characteristic that you consider as your unique selling point. What are they doing? Are they catching up? Are they doing it differently? So all of this analysis can really help you finally to adapt your offering to better serve both your customers that already buy from you and your non-customers who can become potential customers. You have to keep in mind, of course, what the one-time and the ongoing costs of adapting your offering might be. Um, but if you think that it brings added value with limited costs, you should adapt your offer to serve your customers and potential customers better. So thank you, Cynthia. So if you go to the next one, this is in fact an example of when you're talking about non-customers, how do you identify barriers over time? Here, the example is about irrigation pumps. So farmers that go through an entire journey from being non-customers to recurring regular users of a product, which here is irrigation pumps. So as we can see, initially when they're non-customers, the barriers of them being tempted to buy your product might be a lack of awareness, a lack of knowledge of use, a lack of information, and a doubt on the product quality. Then they can move on to the phase where if these barriers are taken away, they become tempted to buy your product. And then from being the temptation to actually buying your product, there might be barriers of their investment capacity, the fact that they're risk averse, and other. Suppose that these barriers are taken away as well, they can then have other problems which might stop them from being continuous users. So instead of doing just one harvest with your product, go on to doing an entire season. This could be the costs of operations, the fact that there's not a good after sales service, the fact that they're not able to maintain the machine, that there's a lack of spare parts, etc. And finally, if these are resolved as well, and they have to go on to being resilient users, recurring users over time across seasons, there might be other barriers of weather conditions, the fact that there's not enough groundwater to be able to use your product, or the fact that they, even if they produce more, they can't actually sell it in the local market, and then a market access barrier. So the idea really is to identify all these barriers over time and make sure that you find a way to adapt your offering to overcome these barriers, to ensure that these non-customers can be turned into customers for you by overcoming these. So let's go on to the next one. I'll Unless there are any questions on the calculation itself. All right. So the next one is about the diversification of your customer base. So looking at the different market segments that you can serve. And here the question is that diversifying your customer base can increase resilience in the face of adverse events, help a young company to maximize profits and reduce risk, generate new product ideas to replace existing products, or all of the above. All right, 5 more seconds. All right, maybe we can show the answer now. Ah, I think quite a few people actually fell into the trap of thinking that it's all of the above. Um, indeed, the fact of addressing many market segments increases the resilience in the face of adverse events by adapting so that you can maximize profits and reduce risk. However, here we need to be careful, and I was going to speak about this later, but I can speak about it now. The fact that younger companies might actually initially, till the time that they're positive on the unit economics, which means that the margin from any one unit that they're producing of a product covers all the direct costs that are related to this product. Till that point, it might actually be more useful for younger companies to concentrate their resources towards the one segment that they're already serving. Um, let's go on to explaining the KPI itself. So as I said, once you have established positive unit economics, splitting your target market into different groups and adapting your offering to each one of them can actually help you maximize profits and reduce risks. The way you calculate the different market segments is that you list the independent segments, which might come from A, selling similar products to a range of customers. So this could be, for example, selling the same or a bit differentiated products to different sales channels through different sales channels like B2C, B2B, or even B2G, which is B2G, which is serving governments, or using different products to clients that are served with the same distribution channel, but the clients that have distinctive needs or different capacities to pay. So, for example, selling a solar light, a simple solar device, would use this to B2C customers, um, would use the same channel as if you were selling, say, a three light system which can support a TV, which can support a fridge, etc. But these are two categories of B2C clients that have different needs, and even though they're being served through the same sales channels, will be considered as different market segments. So the benchmark values that we have come up with here are that for younger companies that are still working on proving their unit economics on the key segment that they are serving, the best practice is to serve that segment till the time that they actually do become economic unit economic profitable. Um, and for those that have already passed that stage who have grown, the more they diversify these market segments, the more they increase their profitability capacity, and the more they diversify their risk. So the best practices here is to first clarify the existing segments that you have before you go on to different sales channels and new segments. So beyond just looking at how you can categorize your clients by geography, demographics, income differences, etc., you should also look at the different pain points that these customers might have. Here, an interesting example is if you are selling improved cook stoves, so cook stoves that are more efficient, use less coal to function, you can have two types of clients who have two different kind of pain points. You could be serving people who already use cook stoves, but traditional cook stoves. So then for them, the pain point would be having a cook stove that uses less coal and causes less pollution, in which case your pitch to them about selling an improved cook stove is very straightforward. It's cheaper, it is less polluting, better for you. Whereas you could also direct your own product of improved cook stoves towards people who cook using open fire. And in this case, the argument has to be adapted a bit. It's a bit more difficult because for them, the argument would be you wouldn't have to go out, collect wood, um, and save. You could save on the time that you're doing this, and you could also reduce the exterior pollution that there is by burning wood. But then there is also a counterbalance of the fact that right now for them it might be free to use wood and cook on open fire, whereas selling your product would require them to spend money to buy the improved cook stove. So you can segment your existing clients in this manner. You could also maximize your existing products by creating dedicated marketing material and sales channels for each segment. So, for example, the same product like a solar fridge could be sold both to pharmacies and to small shops. For pharmacies, your marketing pitch you would probably be, even if the electricity goes away, you are sure that the cold chain of your medicines, your vaccinations, etc., will not be broken. Whereas for a small shop, the marketing argument probably is, well, you don't have to spend money on generators to keep your drinks cold when the light goes out. And that's why the solar fridge product is so much better for you. Finally, I think we should be aware of the fact that not all market segments are equal. They will vary based on size, based on the level of costs and the complexity there is to serve each of these segments. So you should really prioritize what segment enables you to reach your business strategic impact goals. This could be a wide number of things. You might want to target those with the most number of customers. You might want to target those that have the highest impact potential because that's your priority, or you might want to target the ones that are simply have the lowest cost to serve. So that's what we think of when we think of segmenting our different market segments. So moving on to the next one. This one is about revenue streams. And the question here is, the key risk with diversifying your revenue streams is lowering the overall gross margin of your business, engaging in activities that do not bring value to your company's core activity and deprive core activities of key resources, or none of the above. All right. 3, 2, 1. I hope you have all answered, and maybe we can go on to the answer. It's almost a 50. Well, it's exactly a 50-50 split. Well, for those who got it right, congratulations. That's true that the risk with diversifying your revenue is to engage in activities that might not bring a lot of value to your core activity and that might distract resources from it. So looking at the KPI itself, the reason why we measure the different revenue streams is because it is a measure of resilience of your business and whether you are reducing risks and maximizing all possible revenues. So the way to calculate this is, can we please move to the next slide? Yep. So the way we can calculate this is, in fact, to look at the different revenue streams that could typically come by monetizing the byproducts of your core business. So for different segment of pairs, what does the activity that you already do could produce that could be monetized by different segments of pairs? So this could be result-based financing, so mechanisms where the sale of your product is actually remunerated given specific targets that a segment of pair might attach with the sales of your product. It might be consulting services, it might be consumer insights, it might be marketing services that you can provide. It can also be carbon financing, which is quite famous nowadays with the carbon credits. So you list all of these independent revenue streams of your company, apart from, of course, the sale of your core product to your customers. And this gives you the value for the KPI. Um, Again, so as I said, these are usually the different positive externalities that your core present activity might generate. And a good example here is coming back is carbon credits. So nowadays we see a lot of these improved cook stove companies that have been able to produce a new revenue segment, thanks to the fact that compared to traditional methods of cooking, they're actually reducing the amount of carbon produced, and hence they can get the carbon credits that can then be sold on the market and bring in additional revenue for the companies. So the best practices that we've seen here, um, and of course, going back to the benchmark, it's good if you diversify them as much as possible. So two or more is always best practices, to make sure that without putting in too much efforts, too much costs, and distracting yourself from the core practice and core segment that you have of your revenue, you are diversifying your sources of revenue. So you should map all the stakeholders who benefit directly or indirectly from your activities. So if you look at your ecosystem, who are the different players that might be able to benefit from what you are doing? You assess the different potential benefits that you can provide to each of these stakeholders, the kind of revenues that this can generate over time. Then you go on to actually assessing whether, in terms of the cost that it implies to provide these extra benefits to another set of pair, is feasible or not, and confirm that this actually fits in with your strategy that you currently have, and your goals, your business goals that you have set up. So in the case of carbon credits, for example, if you're a small company who is not selling a lot, the fact of setting up the system of carbon credits, actually commercializing them, etc., might have a need for resources and finance such high that it might not make sense for you to actually go into this yet. So you need to measure it in terms of the feasibility in that way. And you should not engage in any activity that does not bring value to your company's core activity. And as we saw in the question, that this could actually deprive your core activity of the key resources if it's not synergetic with what you're doing, and this might actually end up destroying value instead of creating more value. So moving on to our next KPI, which is on gross margin, that I think a lot of you might be familiar with. So you should measure your gross margin for your entire business every year, for each of your product every quarter, for each client segment every year. I think we can go on to the answer. Yeah. So you should ideally be measuring your gross margin, as most of you got it right, for each of your products every quarter. So the gross margin, what it does is basically it helps you assess the potential profitability of your business. For durable goods, it is a good first indicator of whether your business can cover the costs of delivering the products to your customer. So essentially, your gross margin should be high enough to cover all the downstream costs related to providing your good to your customers, and also the overhead costs that you might have as other expenses that come in the downstream phase of your business. The way to calculate this is to look at all the revenues that you get from selling your product, and this has to be at the end user price. What that means is that, for example, if you're selling your product through a wholesale, that you're a wholesaler selling your product through a retailer or through agents, you should not take the price at which you're selling it to the retailer, but the price at which the final consumer is buying the product. So you take your sales revenue at the end user price, and you include any other revenues that are generated directly from the sales of this unit of product. So this could be, again, result-based financing, any carbon credit related revenue, or other revenues that are directly generated thanks to the sale of this product. So from these revenues, you take out the cost of goods sold. So this is material and components, direct labor, shipping, warehousing, import duties, etc., that are related directly to the product, and you divide it by the sales revenue. This will give you the percentage of your gross margin. And depending on whether you provide credit or not, we have set up the benchmark values that we saw from our research. The best practice for those not providing credit is to have a gross margin that is above 35%. And for those that do provide credit and have to take into account the cost of actually lending money over time, it should be above 50%. Now, we have to keep in mind that here we are talking really about the durable goods industry. For fast-moving consumer goods, the gross margin, it depends heavily on the type of product, the geography, the sales channels used, etc. So these benchmark values are really concentrated towards durable goods. We've also to keep in mind that, unlike in manufacturing, uh, producing more and producing economies of scale might not actually apply to the last mile distribution businesses, because this could be because of the geographic spread of the market, the amount of community level, so below the line marketing that is required. Um, with all of these considerations, just increasing volumes might actually not compensate for lower gross margins, and that's why there is a need to have a high enough gross margin. In fact, what we've seen is that pay as you go companies often have margins that are higher than 60, gross margins that are higher than 60% to account for losses in repayments, etc. So once you've calculated the gross margin for each product that you sell, the other best practices could be to make sure that this gross margin is high enough to be resilient in terms of shocks. And this happens a lot in developing economies, in lower income economies, where an economic shock might actually completely disrupt business, and thus you need to make sure that there you have enough of a margin to compensate for this. You should also have a higher gross margin in case you are providing credit. So the longer the loan tenure of the credit that you provide, the higher you would have this. You would need your gross margin to be able to compensate for the costs of providing credit. Moving on now, we'll go to our next question. I hope you're ready for it. Inclusivity ratios. So, how inclusive your business is in particular customer categories, characteristics, and calculating. Yeah, we just stay on the question, please. Thank you. And to calculate this inclusivity ratio, it is useful for raising capital from impact investors, diversifying your customer base to target higher income markets which are more profitable, to leverage result-based financing programs, or all of the above. And as always, we're gonna wait just 5 more seconds. And we can show the answers to the poll. So here, it is in fact all of the above, which is the right answer. So it is helpful to have a better inclusivity ratio if you want to raise capital. It is good so that you realize where you need to diversify in terms of customer base. And it is also useful when you want to leverage result-based financing programs that might reward your sales to particular customer categories such as women, such as lower income populations, the BOP. So the right answer is all of the above, and a good proportion of you have actually got it right. So moving on to the KPI itself, as I was saying, that an inclusivity ratio will tell you how inclusive your business is based on particular customer characteristics. So what we depict here, it could be income level, it could be gender, um, and this can help you adapt your sales or marketing strategy to target either lower income populations or women customers. And of course, as the question mentioned, it is also important when you're preparing to raise capital from impact investors. So here we have two calculations for two inclusive ratios. The one that you see on the top is about the proportion of lower income customers that you might have in your portfolio. So what you do is that you take the percentage of customers who, for example, have an income of less than $3.20 per day uh, as a proportion of your entire customer base, which will give you a percentage of lower income customers in your portfolio. Again, here, just to keep in mind, the $320 is an indication, and this can be adapted to your local situation, to whatever indicator or whatever amount you think is best. And in case it is impossible for you to measure or ask directly the daily revenues of your customers, you could also use some proxies such as where are the customer living, what do they own or not own, do they, for example, have a smartphone, do they have a motorcycle. So all of these can be indicators that show you information on the different levels of incomes between your customers. The second one that we see on the bottom is the same, it's for women. So you take the number of customers that are women as a percentage of your entire customer portfolio, and you get a value. Now, here, contrary to the other benchmarks, there is no set rule. There is no good or bad benchmark value. It really depends on what your goal as a company is. So, if your goal is to have more, be impact first, and have more women clients, because that's the main proposition of your company, having a higher ratio is good. But if that's not your goal, there's no good indicator as such for this KPI. So the best practices in for this kind of inclusivity KPI is to incentivize your sales agents to target customers through higher commissions or bonuses. So you could have a part of the commission that goes to goes to agents, based on how many women clients or how many low income clients are they targeting when they go out and sell. Just a very important point on this would be to make sure that in case you're providing credit, you should have a good credit appraisal process to make sure that you don't have faulty payments later on just because you're targeting a certain group of customers. The second one is that only targeting customers that live below the poverty line might actually affect your financial sustainability. So, to offset any potential losses, it's actually important that you diversify the kind of clients that you're serving. So, you serve more profitable clients with higher incomes, um, as well as the base of the pyramid, and that you leverage, say, result based financing for serving clients that are below the poverty line. You can also use tools such as the poverty probability index. It's just an example to provide data on which you can assess how much your inclusivity ratios are, and whether your decisions that you're making are aligned with your strategy based on with the help of these tools. What we will go on to see in the next slide is, again, as we said, there are no good or bad values, but GDC did do a survey of its members to identify where they stand in terms of income and gender inclusivity. So the way to read this graph is that there are four different segments of industries where the members were providing products: cooking, solar, agriculture, wash. Um, and the x-axis is the percentage of their customers, whereas the y-axis is the percentage of companies surveyed. So if we look at the pop-up box which is on the slide, what the 40% here represents is that for the members of the GDC who are in the wash industry, um, between 40 to 60% of their customers are living under $3.20 a day. So basically, if we look at again the next category on the same graph, what the 0% shows is that for the same sector, there are 0% of clients that are between 60 and 80%, and then 20% of companies whose 80 to 100% of clients are under the $3.20 level. If we look at cooking, for example, 21% of the companies respond that 80 to 100% of their clients are living under the $3.20 per day limit. The lines that we also see, the 52% and the 51% in solar and agriculture, is actually the median value for these industries. So this is just an indication of what income inclusivity looks like in the GDC membership. We have the same analysis for the gender inclusivity as well. If you go on to the next slide, please. So in terms of gender exclusivity, what you can see here, again, the same way to read the graph. If you look at the first one, cooking, it says that for 47% of the respondents, over 80% of the clients that they serve were women. Uh, I guess it's a bit biased because it's cooking. But then if you look at wash, similarly, there are about 20% of the GDC members who have more than 80% of women in their customer portfolio. Moving on to today's last KPI, and starting with the question, like now I'm pretty sure you're very used to. This question, which is only for pay-as-you-go companies, because this is a KPI which is concentrated towards pay-as-you-go companies, measuring the utilization rate at 60 days can help assess the quality of client selection and onboarding, can measure your current overall portfolio performance, can help predict the final repayment rate of a cohort of clients, all of the above. So it'll give you a little bit of time to think about this. And 3, 2, 1, let's move on to the answer.
Some of us the question didn't come up.
Great. So, yeah. Sorry.
Some of us the question didn't come up.
Can we go back to the question slide then? I think Major, it didn't show, for example. Please let us know when you do see the question.
I see it now. I've answered. Thank you.
All right. We'll leave a little bit of more time so that you can respond as well. Even though I think the ones who were the most attentive might have seen some of the answers, but I'm sure. Okay, let's go on to the answers then. I see a lot of you have actually answered all of the above, whereas the right choices were the first and the third, which is they can help you assess the quality of your client selection and onboarding, and they can help you predict the final repayment rate of a cohort of clients. So let's go on to the KPI. So the reason that you need to calculate this KPI is in fact because it provides rapid feedback on the effectiveness of your company's current credit screening and client onboarding process. I'll take some time to explain what we see here, and this is how we this is showing how we calculate the product utilization rate. We basically have to take all the customers who have reached 60 paying days, the 60 paying days milestone during the last 6 months. So we take a recent cohort of the last 6 months of everybody who has reached the milestone where they were supposed to pay for 60 days of using their pay-as-you-go product. We will not be including, if there is any free trial at the initial stage right after purchase, we do not include these days in the calculation. And at the end, if people pay in advance beyond the first 60 paying days, we won't take that into calculation either. So here, let's say that somebody paid upfront the first payment in week 1 and then had 2 weeks of free use that were not being counted as paying days. We do not count these days. We start counting from the first day where they're supposed to pay to be able to use their product, which in this example is at week 3. So the 60 days that follow, where the client is supposed to pay each day to be able to use their product, is what we look at. In this example, the ones that are in the dots that are in red are the days where the client fails to pay for that day and thus cannot use the device that they have bought. So we see that in the first 60 days, where the client was supposed to pay for the device, they have successfully paid for 58 days. And then the calculation would be to do 58 days divided by 60. So they have a utilization rate of 97%. We can calculate this for all customers that have bought a product and have reached the 60 paying days milestone in the last 6 months, by taking all these customers in the last 6 months and then dividing that number by 60 into the total number of customers that we have, so that we get the utilization rate on the whole cohort level. So this, as I was saying, has proved to be a good predictor of the future repayment trend of new customers, because the customers who are not paying on time in the first 2 months might quite likely either have not fully understood the product that they bought, or might be unable or unwilling to meet the payment commitments that they have for this product, and their contractual obligations in buying a pay-as-you-go product. So here this is very similar to another KPI that quite a few of you in the PayGo industry might be familiar with, which is called the paid versus planned KPI. So basically, how much have customers paid in comparison to what was the planned payment they should have made to begin with. Um, the reason why we have proposed a slight change is because the paid versus planned KPI often includes any advance payment that the customers might have made at the end of the 60-day period, and thus it creates a bias because it shows payments that might actually cross 100% of what was supposed to be paid, because there are people who have paid in advance. And thus here we don't take into account the last any advance payment that is made for use beyond the 61st days. Another point to keep in mind is that this KPI might actually be quite seasonal. So depending on what season you are in, the sales might vary and the usage from clients might vary. So beyond comparing this KPI every month, you should also compare this KPI in the same month across years to have a good idea of where you stand on this KPI and to avoid any seasonality in the measures over the year when doing it every month. The benchmark values observed here, best practice to have people who have paid for more than 90% of the first 60 days, good between 80 to 90%, and can be improved under 80% of your cohort in the last 6 months that has reached the 60 paying days milestone and has made successful payments. The best practices that we see here, the first one is to actually monitor proactively. So you need to set up an early warning system to identify customers that are at risk, and you should have processes to act quickly and swiftly on that. It should ideally be done with the calls or SMS, and you should deploy agents on the ground only if it cannot be done via calls or SMS. You should make sure that when a sales is being conducted, that your sales agents actually explain to the client what pay as you go means. The fact that they need to pay every month and that they're paying for owning an asset at the end of the period, not for a service. So we've seen the model of energy as a service, which is different from the pay-go model because of the possession of the asset at the end of the payment period. So making sure that the contractual obligations are clear to the client, and this you can assure by either role playing during training with agents or managers actually checking the sales pitch that your agents make on the ground to ensure that there aren't people who are not aware of what they're buying eventually. To go further, you can conduct a deeper analysis by measuring not just 60 days, but the same KPI at 30 days as well. So an even shorter period to give you a measure of where your portfolio is in terms of utilization rate. And for those ratios, if they go below 65 to 70%, you need to quickly act, and you need to go deeper and see why this ratio is falling beyond 65 or 70%. So assessing the reason. These reasons can either be exceptional because somebody was unable to pay and the client had a circumstance that stopped them from being able to pay. Maybe they were gone away from their home for a few days, or there was an accident which happened, or there was another emergency at home, versus those clients who cannot afford the product or did not understand the product initially, or do not want to comply with their contractual obligations. And for this second category of products, you should repossess the product quickly for these bad sales. So you reimburse any part of the upfront payment that is due to them, and you take back the product and you repossess it. And that's the best practice that we have experienced on the that we have seen from the experiences on ground. You can also tie your sales agents' incentives to the loan performance. So having one part of the commission that they get actually dependent on the performance of the clients paying over time, and and finally you can have an upfront payment which is a bit heavier, because it has been seen by us that when there are upfront payments that are more significant, it is an indicator of people who will eventually repay their pay as you go better than those who have a smaller upfront payment. So it's connected to the repayment success. So that was about product utilization rate. And in fact, with that, we come to the end of the KPIs in this first value proposition section of the GDC benchmark that we are presenting to you and on which the training is based. I think we now go into the Q&A section. We still have some time left. We have our 15-20 minutes as promised. And I'll hand it over to you, Jessica.
Thanks, Shi. Very informative and perfect timing, which I love. So we've had a question and a couple of comments relating to the USP KPI. So maybe we can start there. So Patrick L from BC asked the question, isn't the USP in the problem that you're trying to solve rather than the product itself? So Patrick, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that question.
Thank you, Jessica. And my name is Patrick from Business Connect. I hope I'm audible. I was looking at the unique selling proposition. Do we really talk more about the product, or what is it that the customer, the client is trying to solve? That we might want to talk about it more than just the product. Then we can actually connect the product to the problem and see whether it can actually solve the issue that the customer is trying to solve. So that makes it like a bit more of instead of looking at the product, then you are looking at the problem that the customer is trying to solve. I'm not so sure whether I'm making sense, but I'm trying to look at it that way.
If I understand it correctly, you are right. We're trying to look at the problems of the customers, but here the unique selling proposition is basically whatever makes your product or service better than or different than your competitors' products. So the use of identifying these USPs is to see what competitive advantage, what extra value are you bringing to your clients. And when you ask them of the characteristics that they like in your product better than the other competitors, you're actually able to identify what sets you apart from the competition. And when you do the same activity for the non-customers, you will also identify different characteristics that they value in products from competitors, and the different barriers that stop them from purchasing your product. So here the idea really is to see what are either those attributes of your product and your service that are making people come to you rather than other uh, providers in the market, or which are stopping other people from coming to you and buying your product. So at the end of the day, it's really about identifying those barriers so that you can work on overcoming them and making sure that your customers are better served. Am I responding to the question? I see a thumbs up from Patrick. Hopefully, I mean, yeah.
Maybe just to add one point, the idea where I think, Patrick, you got it right, is that the idea is really to restart from your client's problem and understand how your product or solution really answers those problems. And that is going to be what is going to define your unique selling proposition. It's how you specifically answer the challenges that your clients face. Other than that, and to define it better, you do need to speak to your clients also about their problem. The other point where speaking about the problem is important is whenever it's for the sales force, when you train them, you want to make sure that they also start from the problem their clients or prospective clients are facing, to make sure that then they describe the unique selling proposition you have in a way that answers specifically the challenges that the person they're speaking to has. So I guess that's the link between the two.
Thanks, Lucy. We've got another question on the unique selling point. So Bonahamni Idris from Fonborn is asking, why are we analyzing customers and non-customers when we're looking at USP instead of customers and prospective customers? And I think that's echoed by Karis, who's put in the chat. He would prefer to look at his already like productive customers when he's looking at USP. So maybe there's a bit of a clarification there around who you should be looking at with USP. And please, Karas or Fanahamni, please clarify the question if you want to.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity and for the program. I'm asking because we are on field, and to me, I believe that those people who are using my product as we speak, there are neighbors beside them who are not buying my product, who are buying competitors' products. So I can see them as prospective customers. So I want to analyze to them the quality of my product, in terms of affordability, the price, and the performance levels of my product to those who are already using it. So I would rather put my effort and energy to sell either through referral to the prospective customer who sees the product but is not buying it than non-customer, because non-customer might not have opportunity of even seeing my product yet. That is why I think that I would prefer to align with prospective customer whom I believe probably saw it but has not taken a decision about it. Thank you.
Yep. I think we are saying somewhat of a similar thing, and if maybe Cynthia, you can go on that chart that shows all the different stages of customers in the example with irrigation. So basically, I think here we encompass prospective customers who might just be on the verge of taking a decision in the analysis as well. So if there is a customer who has seen your product and is tempted to buy it but has not bought it yet, again, asking them as well the question of why they have not bought it might actually uncover some barriers. So they might have a hesitation because they're not sure of the quality, or because of another reason. So they're included in this analysis. I hear your point also about the amount of effort that has to go in, but here what we are suggesting is to have these questions being asked to 20 to 100 people, and through call centers or directly on the ground. So it is not an enormous effort, but the fact that you ask this to non-customers at all stages, in, of course, your area of where you concentrate your activities, so the market that you're serving, is to make sure that regardless of what stage the non-customers are at in terms of vis-a-vis your product and your service, you can still identify barriers to be able to not necessarily convince the particular customer who gives the feedback, but in general take away these barriers for other clients who might be in a similar situation, including, of course, as you said, prospective customers who are about to buy your product as well.
Thank you, Chi. So Patrick from BC wants to know the difference between prospective customers and non-customers.
So the way I see it, and maybe I can show it with the graph that we had seen. Cynthia, would you be able to go back on the slide on irrigation, the example that we had right next to the USP slide? But here what we're saying is that, in fact, prospective customers are a part of a wider range of customers, which we are calling non-customers. So somebody who is tempted to buy your product, who might or might not be convinced by its quality, by its value that it brings to them, is still in that category, and is also one of the customers that should be one of the potential customers that should be surveyed with this this question on the unique selling proposition.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Maybe just unmute and ask it now if you'd like to have any clarifications on any of the 7 KPIs. So Nguyen Min has asked if we could share any more effective tools to assess income levels in the community.
I think
we
we have some related resources that we have mentioned in the report, and maybe we can put them in the chat here if you have them on hand, Jessica, relating to the inclusivity KPI on income levels. And that might be useful to look at. There are a lot of different proxy tools that are available online in terms of what different measures you can take to assess the income levels of your clients. So in case we have them, maybe we can share them. Otherwise, on the report that we did share with you, which is available online, there is a whole set of additional resources related to each KPI. So in those additional resources, there is more information as to on the topic of income inclusivity as well.
Yes, thank you.
I'm not sure that copied across so well, but what I'll do at the end of this session anyway is I'll be sharing the link to both the reports and the tool that you can use as your homework. Do we have any additional questions from the audience today? We've got a few more minutes left, so please don't be shy. There's no silly question. And if there is, I've probably asked it already. Okay, great. Then in that case, we'll probably wrap up a couple of minutes earlier. But before you go, we're going to put a poll up. This is an anonymous feedback poll. Please do take the time to fill it out. It helps us immensely with making these sessions as useful as possible for you guys. And I'd like to thank Lucy and Chi for their expertise today, but also Cynthia and Mayjoy from the GDC team who have done a lot in the background to make this training possible. As mentioned, we will circulate the recording. The Excel tool I'll drop in the chat, but we'll also pop it on email, and the report itself with you. So please do keep an eye out for that. The Excel tool that accompanies the report, we would like you to complete for homework. So the tool contains all 23 KPIs, but over the next week, please just try to focus on those 7 KPIs that we covered today. And then if you're able to do that before next Thursday, and have any queries, please send that across so we can look at it, and then we can address those in the drop-in session, which will happen next Thursday. But that was a lot of information. I appreciate that. We'll send out an email that clarifies everything, and I'll drop the tool in the chat now. Any final questions? Okay, well, in that case, thank you very much for your attendance and for staying for the whole session. I appreciate it was a little bit longer than we usually do for these trainings. And it's nice to see consistently that you've all stayed for the whole time. So thank you again for your time, and I wish you a very productive and healthy week. And we'll see you hopefully for the drop-in session next Thursday. Bye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.